Hey there friends, just a quick note here at the beginning of the video. Today's video does contain subject matter that some people may find disturbing, and as always, viewer discretion is advised, and if you have a story, you can always send it my way at asravendreams.com. But that is not why I'm doing this little intro. Today's video is the first of 5, I believe, feature spots in the month of June. Today's video features fellow narrator and friend of mine, Nightmare's Edge. Edge is a fairly newer narrator. He's been doing it for a little bit, but he's a smaller channel, and I would love it if you guys would send him some love if you liked what he does, if you liked his narrations. Obviously, constructive criticism is always welcome if you have something to say, but please do frame it constructively. Don't be rude. And that's my main thing here. We're all doing this because we love it, because we have fun with it, and being rude just isn't necessary. So, yeah. He will be doing stories number 2 and number 4, and I think he did a pretty good job. So, again, show him some love. Down in the description, you'll find his links. And as always, my friends, I hope you enjoy. To paint the picture, it was my freshman year at Portland State University. October-November time period. It was cool and breezy. A perfect night for sneaking some alcohol past the RAs in the Broadway resident hall. A handful of friends that I created a friend group of decided to gather in a new mate's dorm while her sister was away, and pass the night's time with rosé Angry Orchards and sour apple Four Locos. See, at Broadway, they did a few rounds nightly to assure the noise levels were down, that no lower-classmen were in the upper floors, no alcohol drinking, or drug partaking was occurring, etc. At this time, it was about 9 p.m., and, being the klutz that I was, I spilled my Four Loko over a blanket sheet, causing the smell to attract the RA on their rounds. Long story short, we all got written up, had to dump what we had left, and called it a night. Well, a friend and I, call her D, went down to the notorious Mac shop downstairs to chain smoke our American spirits and rave about how the night was still young and it was a damn shame the fun had to be ruined so early on. We were met with an older 30s to early 40s man who seemed nice enough to greet us, as they all do. He overheard how the night was just as young as we were, and if we were down, he would pull some cash for beer, and we would all drink together in his penthouse. Now, D and I chalked up his penthouse talk to being BS, but the promise of free beer already had us all in. We walked to the Wells Fargo on Southwest 5th and Hall. He grabbed his funds and got some PBR and Angry Orchards at Max. We head to the dark park blocks. D and I hyped up we can continue our buzz and get drunk for free. Now, if you live in Portland and have college friends or went to PSU, you know of The View. Heading to the direction of the art museum, he unlocks the front door to The View. D and I now convinced he wasn't blowing smoke up our back ends about having a penthouse. There we go to the elevator with this stranger, and lo and behold, he presses the P button atop a long list of numbers indicating each floor, and we head up to the penthouse. We get to his door, D and I holding each other's hands in companionship and excitement that we're in a dang penthouse getting drunk. We sit in the center of the man's living room, having the smallest of small talk about law and order, and he tells D and I how he affords the penthouse through his fish and chip food cart in the South Park blocks by the PSU library, etc. We're basically working our way through as many beers as we can before we admire the cityscape from the balcony, before leaving. We pay most of his words and talk no mind. We head out to the balcony and look overhead, smoking and raving to our group chat about what we got ourselves into, and enjoying ourselves. Now, the whole time we were at this man's table and on his balcony, he was texting or calling somebody, or several people, on his phone. We consider it to not be an issue, until after about 20 minutes into basking in the penthouse views, we notice a lady that's not too well kept and tidy sitting on his couch, talking with him. He tells us to take a seat. We hesitate, but sit down. I sit on the farthest end of the couch from the mysterious lady. Dee sits next to the guy as she tries rushing through her beers and texts in the group chat for someone to call in a few minutes, with an excuse for us to dip, now that we've had as many beers as we could and we want to leave. The penthouse predator leans in towards Dee, tells her how beautiful her eyes are. He dives quickly to her face for a kiss, in which she dodges amazingly fast. She mumbles how she isn't okay with that, and that our friend, T, is actually her girlfriend. I ramble on about how that's true and how I have a boyfriend. Also a lie, but it sounded good at the time. The man then puts his hands in his face, stands up aggressively and swiftly enough to bump his table, and knocks over all the beer cans and glasses on top of it, and angrily says, "What the hell? You have 5 seconds to run before I rape you all." Dee and I exchange frightened looks, her saying, "What?" before I yank her arm, grab our phones and bags as we run to navigate to the elevator. We frantically run down the hall, scared, making it into the elevator before we remember there's a poor lady in there now alone, and locked in with him. We contemplate calling the police, or our friends for help, or saving the lady first. Dee and I decide simultaneously to run down to the lobby, where I leave 3 maximum capacity voicemails to our aforementioned friend T, who did not answer. Once we realized it was now 3 a.m. and none of our friends were awake, we decided to tiptoe back to his door and overheard the 2 laughing. Apparently the lady is a regular of his, either an SW or his own personal sex buddy, and he had called her over to convince us to have a threesome, or foursome. But he exposed that he wanted to keep Dee around a little longer. That was enough for us both to hear, to run back to the elevators, run back to our dorm building, and try to sober up to piece together how we got ourselves into that situation, and what exactly we got ourselves into. The next morning, our group chat blew up over what happened, us not recalling much after the alcohol, and our brains trying to block out what we did comprehend, but did not want to discuss. Our friend T played my voicemails over and over to the friend group, with it being laughed at over time once the seriousness died down. I'm unsure if that man was the guy that ran the popular fish and chips cart right outside of the PSU library, or if the food cart is still there to this day. I dropped out of college after just 1 semester, so I paid no mind during that time to ever verify if the man was telling the truth. I still bounce back between Portland and whichever new state I choose to reside in, and I might just go one day to see if it's there. To see if he is still there. All I know is I never wish to see that penthouse predator in Portland, Oregon ever again.
I have a story that actually took place back in the year 2006, which was my junior year of high school. I was a bit of a loner throughout pretty much all of my school years, but I had a couple of friends, and I really started to blossom at the end of the sophomore year and into my last 2 years of school. I got more involved in a few cliques and started coming into who I was as a person the more time I spent with the group that I considered my good friends. Now, despite me being a loner, I have 2 people in my life that I consider to be my best friends. 2 people that had been with me for literally since the day my family moved into the house I grew up in. They were Ken and his sister Maria. Ken was a year younger than me, and Maria was my age. and when we were little, the three of us were inseparable. However, as we started growing up, I found myself spending more time with Ken than Maria, which was bound to happen since we were both boys. I never had anything against Maria. She was a dear friend to me and treated me like her own brother. It was just that Ken and I obviously had more in common. When Ken and I would want to go outside and hike around the woods near our homes, she would always gawk at the idea. She had become more of a girly girl and was more into makeup and dolls, and she never wanted to do the things we did, so her being less involved with us was almost to be expected. She ended up finding other girls that she called her friends, and Ken and I spent time doing whatever it was that we did at that age. Now, like I said, near the end of my high school career, I kind of started hanging out with a couple of cliques of guys and gals that I would think it would be safe to label as the skater crowd. They were basically the early generation of the scene kids, wearing plaid and tight jeans with dyed black hair. You know the type of kids I'm talking about. Anyway, as I started to get more involved with this group, I started talking to Ken a lot less, and had pretty much all but stopped talking to Maria. Ken's group of friends was more into football, and the jocks were certainly the polar opposite of the crew I was hanging out with. We didn't fall out or dislike each other, just grew apart and accepted that life was different for us. This was just the nature of high school cliques. It wasn't a matter of liking or disliking others, we just all kind of fell into our own groove. I know this is all kind of sounding like I'm just explaining my childhood and high school life, and I apologize. It's just kind of important to know all this so you know who I was, who my friends were, and to understand how things went from there. Anyway, as I was getting more into this group, I actually met a girl named Sarah, and Sarah was everything that I was attracted to at the time. She was punk, she hated authority, and was probably the most goth person in our crew. She was new to the school, and she had pretty much defaulted into hanging out with our group, and from the first day that I saw her, I had the biggest crush on her. To push things along a bit and cut out the unimportant parts, Sarah and I ended up dating about a month after we met, and we were always all over each other. She was my first girlfriend, and I had no idea how to handle relationships, so I pretty much fell head over heels and became obsessed with her. I think it was mutual, to be honest with you. She and I were pretty close from the start. Word got around really quickly that Sarah and I were dating, and by the end of the week, everyone knew we were a thing. I remember Ken actually coming up to me and making a joke about how I finally got a girl, and that it was a good thing that I was dating up. I laughed it off, probably cracked a joke at him, and we went our separate ways again. I thought it was just a one-off thing, but that night, Maria actually showed up at our front door. I answered and stepped outside to talk to her and ask her what was up. This is where the craziness started. She immediately started asking me all kinds of questions that came out of nowhere. Who was Sarah? Were we really dating? Did I know what kind of person she really was? I told her that yes, we were dating and that I really liked her, and then asked her what the hell she was going on about. Why did she care so much about who I was dating? Then the rumor mill talk started. She said that Sarah was a drug addict, that she had to move school districts because she had gotten pregnant and abandoned the child and they found out. She said that she had proof that Sarah was dating several other guys at the same time, and that she was impure. She literally used that word, impure. I, again, asked what the hell she meant by all this. I told her that I was pretty sure everything she just said was a lie or a rumor, and that she needed to get to know the real Sarah before judging her. Out of nowhere, Maria grabs my face and pulls me in, then tries to kiss me. I pushed her away and yelled at her to stop. I was seriously confused by what this was. Maria then starts in about how she and I were soulmates. We were destined to be together and I needed to see that. I mentioned that she and I had barely spoken for several years, that she wasn't my type and that I saw her more of a sister than anything. Her response was to slap me and tell me it was our destiny to be together, and that I didn't have a choice in the matter. I remember calling her several expletives and slamming the door in her face after that. Unfortunately, that's not where it ended with her, though it did end pretty quick. It was actually the next day at school, when I got off the bus and started to walk up the door. Ken walked up to me looking genuinely pissed off. My initial thought was that he was mad that I hurt Maria's feelings, but he then starts telling me something I didn't anticipate. Apparently, when Ken and Maria's mother dropped them off that morning, Maria ran into the school and went into hunting mode. She was on a mission to find and confront Sarah about dating me, and to tell her that she was my soulmate. When she found her, she started talking crazy about me, about everything, and she started screaming in the hallway, calling Sarah names and yelling about how she was impure. She then finished off by yelling out that she was still pure and had saved herself for me, because she and I were in love and were going to be together in the end. Obviously, Sarah laughed this off and called her crazy, to which Maria proved how crazy she truly was. Apparently, when Sarah turned away, Maria smashed her head into the wall, breaking her nose and bruising her up really bad. After Sarah fell to the ground and was trying to figure out what had happened, Maria had pulled off her belt and started beating Sarah with it repeatedly. This whole thing happened within the 5 or so minutes before I got there, and it took 2 teachers to restrain Maria before she was pulled away by the resource officer. There's not a lot more to the story beyond the obvious. There was a lot of chatter about how crazy Maria was, and people were looking at me weird, most likely because of what she was shouting about me. Maria ended up expelled from the school, and I recall there being talks about her being charged for something due to how aggressive she was, but I don't think anything legal ever came of it. Sarah ended up going to the hospital with a badly broken nose and a significant number of bruises from the belt, but she ended up being okay, minus her nose having a slight curve from the break. I didn't speak to Maria again after this, and Ken pretty much made it a point to avoid me. Sarah and I dated until we graduated, and then decided to call it quits when she moved away to an art school. We're still friends on Facebook and chat randomly, but that's all. I actually got a friend request from Maria on Facebook last week, which is the reason I remembered all of this. Let me tell you, I never hit the decline request button faster for anyone in my entire life.
One day, my best friend and I were taking a shortcut to her house. It goes past a few houses and through a smaller area of woods, crossing a 2-foot wide creek. This particular day, I was wearing one of those jackets that had earbuds as the strings, a must-have item as a 5th grader in 2010 or 11. As we were passing one of the houses, a couple of big dogs came running from it, jumping on us and obviously just wanting to play or be petted. The owner of the house comes out, and I noticed right away that he was acting really fidgety and nervous, saying stuff about the dogs like, "Oh, it's okay. They're nice. Don't worry." We made small talk with him about the dogs for a few minutes, and turned around to leave. About a minute or so later, we arrived at the small creek when I noticed that one of the rubber earbuds that was on my jacket was gone, and I insisted on going back to look for it. The guy came back out again and offered to help us. He asked what the material was made of, and I said that it was made of rubber. We made small talk again, I think about the jacket and how cool it was. Anyway, he said he was going to be right back with his metal detector. He walked away toward his shed, and I said to my friend, "Why does he need a metal detector? The earbud's made of rubber." And next thing you know, he's coming back with, and I kid you not, a rifle. And he's literally running towards us. When I'm telling you that we ran. When we got to safety, past the creek and near her house, I was telling her that we needed to call 911. She insisted that we not do that because her parents would be mad at her, and I explained to her with urgency why it's important to call the cops. But she refused, and I couldn't force her. I didn't call because I didn't want to do it alone, plus it would have been my first time calling them. I can't remember when or if I told my parents that night what happened, but when I told them, they gaslit me and said that I was crazy and overreacting. That I didn't really see that. I still think about this damn near every day, and it haunts me. The second time was, again, in 5th grade, taking place after the first story, but I'm not sure how long after. The friend from the previous story lived near a cemetery, about a 5-minute walk from her house. It was a big cemetery, and we liked to walk around it a lot. Plus, behind the cemetery was a shortcut through the woods to a big park, which was coincidentally right next to our school. This day, we were also with another good friend of ours. We were just walking around the cemetery this day when all of a sudden, a blue truck pulls up next to us in the row next to where we were walking, about 10 feet away or so. Not far. I could see 2 guys were in it, literally just staring at us. And I, again, got that weird feeling I got with the first guy. And this is hard to explain, but right before the shortcut in the woods is a fence with a cutout that leads to a field of grass and a hill next to it, and that leads into the neighborhood of where my other friend lived. The hill was really a bunch of dead grass, weeds, sticks, cattails, etc. Anyway, I told my friend I had a bad feeling about these guys, that they were staring at us, and quite literally slowly following us with the truck. We booked it to that grass field and through that hill. I had all sorts of cuts and gashes from the crap that we were running through, and when we got to the top of the hill, we turned around, and the truck was parked at the top of the hill on the other side, with both men outside of it holding guns. I truly believe they were coming after us, and they were visibly mad that we got away from them. I knew that they were after us because they have had to have driven through the cutout in the fence, amongst the gut feelings and just the entire situation. We ran to my friend's house, noticed her parents, who truly didn't seem too worried, and drove my other friend and me home. I don't even remember if I told my parents about it this time since they gaslit me when I told them about the last time. I just can't shake the fact that this crap really happened when I was in 5th grade, 10, 11 years old. I also can't believe how lightly my parents took the situation. I'm honestly traumatized about what happened, and I think about it a lot. I just needed to tell some people what happened, but I have trouble getting my thoughts into words.
For the record, I'm a 23-year-old woman now, and this all happened back when I was 13, so in 2011. I was meeting up with a friend of mine at a strip mall, and we were supposed to go to the movies. I don't even know what we were going to see. I just remember we were excited because we were going to be alone for the first time. My parents were more strict than hers, so we told them that it was going to be the 2 of us and her dad. But her parents really didn't care, which, looking back, isn't something that should be celebrated. For us, it was a huge deal because we hadn't done anything with just the 2 of us, and we were feeling like we were super grown up. So we were dropped off at the movie theater with cash to buy tickets and some popcorn, and basically told to have a good night and then they would be back in a few hours to pick us up. We got inside the theater and got our tickets to whatever movie we were going to see. We had about a half an hour before the movie started, so we decided to check out the little arcade, mostly to play Pac-Man. We spent the cash that we had left playing games, and the whole time we were in there, there was a guy that was just standing outside the door and staring into the arcade. It really didn't bother me, because I thought he was looking at the games, and I didn't really think he was doing anything too far out there, but I noted that he was there and just kept it in the back of my mind that he was there. After around 15 or so minutes of playing the games, the guy that was standing there finally walked into the arcade and kind of walked over to where we were standing, but again, didn't say anything. It was at this point that I noticed he had a young boy with him that was probably 6 or so years old, which made me realize that he was definitely not paying attention to us and he was just looking around. He walked over to where we were and was kinda hovering with his little kid, and after watching me play Pac-Man for a few minutes, he made a comment about how great it was to see someone of my generation playing the classics. I said thanks to him and mentioned that Pac-Man had been my favorite game for a long time, and mentioned that it was because of my dad that I played it at all. After a bit of us all just kind of standing there, we decided that we needed to get to the movie. I mentioned that we had to go and told him that it was all his. We left and went to watch the movie. About halfway through the movie, I really needed to head to the restroom, which was pretty on par for me. I had a small bladder and I have a bad habit of drinking soda way too fast. So I told my friend and decided to go to the restroom really quick. I got up and exited out into the hallway, when who should I run into but the guy that was at the arcade and his kid. Again, he had a 6-year-old boy with him, so I wasn't thinking much of him. But he waved and smiled at me and made a joke like, "Long time no see." I chuckled and said, "Yup," then kept on to the restroom. I got in and went into the stall to do my business when I heard the door opening slowly and the sound of someone stepping into the restroom. Now, this was a public restroom, so someone else entering a few moments after I did wasn't something that was cause for alarm. For some reason, though, I was feeling super uneasy about it. It was like my mind was telling me that there was something going on, despite the fact that there was no reason for me to believe that there was any cause for alarm. I was just sitting there and kind of peering through the crack in the stall to see if I could see who entered in the bathroom mirror, when my irrational fear was confirmed as not so irrational. I saw the man, the one with the little boy, walking slowly into the women's restroom and looking around. My heart was racing. This was the kind of thing that my nightmares were made of. No adult man would be walking into the women's restroom like that, especially when they knew that there was a teenage girl in said restroom, unless they had malicious intent. The span of 30 seconds between him entering and this situation coming to an end felt like hours. Thankfully, the man's little boy opened the door and shouted, "Daddy, this is the girls' bathroom." As soon as he did, the man quickly turned around and ran back out to the hallway. I just sat there silently holding my breath while my heart exploded out of my chest for several seconds, then finished my business and very swiftly made my exit. I practically ran back to the showing room and back to my seat. I was terrified that this guy was going to follow me and try to corner me. Thankfully, I didn't see him the rest of the night, but I think my friend could tell that something was going on. I never told her about it because I didn't want her to freak out, and I obviously never told my parents about it. I know that this whole situation could have gone much worse, and I know that if his son hadn't intervened, this would have ended differently. Ever since that night, I've actually had a fear of going anywhere alone, and I have to have someone with me anytime I'm in public. I'm glad it just ended quickly and without incident, and in the 10 years since then, I'm glad that that guy and I never met again.
It started in October of 2018 at a surprise birthday party. The party was for a good friend of mine, and all her closest friends and her parents were invited. A few days before this, I'd had a muscle injury and was taking painkillers for the same, which is why I could attend the party but had to decline drinks. A man at the party who was a friend of one of the people invited noticed me turning down a drink. He asked me why, and I explained, and we made small talk for a few minutes. I spent the rest of the party with my friends. A few days later, I got a text from an unknown number asking how my injury was. It was the man from the party, who had taken my number from the group chat where the invite had been sent. I thought it was nice of him to check up on me, so I said I was better and thanked him for asking. After this, he struck up a conversation about something else. I spoke to him for a while and then ended the conversation as I had to go out with some friends. The next day he tried to make conversation again and asked me where I usually partied, what I liked to do for fun, etc. I answered honestly. because I didn't perceive this as threatening and thought if my friend was friends with this man, he would be nice. I was 21 at the time and in college, so I quickly became swamped with assignments soon after, and started sending shorter and later replies to his texts. At this point, along with the random questions about my opinions on various things, he started asking me to meet him at bars that I used to frequent or at a cafe nearby. I told him I had a lot of work to do for college, and he said I could just meet him for a silent hangout, or I could work on my assignment and he would sit silently next to me doing his own thing. I thought that sounded strange, so I declined. Also, keep in mind that this was a man who was a few years older than me and working. So I was also wondering why he was trying so hard to hang out with a college student. I started ignoring some of his texts, post his repeated suggestions to hang out, and would only reply in monosyllables. I blocked him from viewing my stories on Instagram after he kept replying asking me where I was partying. This didn't stop him from texting me often. Worried that he was trying to pursue me romantically, I started replying to his texts that said "what's up" with messages where I said I was spending time with my boyfriend, which he would ignore or say, "Oh, that's nice," and then go back to asking me questions or asking to meet. A few weeks later, I ran into him at a party. I was slightly tipsy and hanging out with some male friends, and he saw me across the room and texted, "Is that your boyfriend?" I was drunk enough to reply back denying this and made a joke about it, and then went back to talking to my friends. At the end of the party, I started to head out to book a cab for myself, and he came up to me and asked if I was going back alone at 2 a.m. I said yes, and he insisted on dropping me back in his car. I denied as I was uncomfortable with the idea of being in a car alone with him. He told me his friends would be coming too, that it wouldn't be just the two of us. I hesitantly agreed to wait for them, but his friends called soon after and informed him that they had decided to stay longer. I said I would book a cab, and he insisted that he would book it for me so that I would be safe. He asked for the address, and since I wasn't comfortable revealing my partner's address, I gave the name of a restaurant nearby. He asked me if the house was close, and insisted on a more specific address. But I said it wasn't on maps and that I could walk to it. He booked the cab, and as we stood waiting for it, he said something like, "You know, you really know how to make people feel bad about themselves. Like they can't befriend you." The cab arrived and I got in, confused about his statement. When I got to the restaurant, I instructed the cab driver to drive into the lane where my partner's house was, and I ended the ride there. The man immediately called me and asked me if I was safe. I said yes, and we ended the call. And once again, I wondered if I had misjudged him, and if he had been trying to take care of me. After this, he went back to texting me often, sometimes even after I didn't reply, saying hi or asking me what I was doing on Saturday. One day, I was going to meet a friend at a bakery near my house. As I entered the place, I got a call from him saying he saw me from the bar right next to the bakery, that he was there with friends on the balcony and that I could join them if I wanted. I declined, stating that I was there to catch up with a friend. The friend canceled soon after, so I left the place, but as soon as I did, he called again, asking me why I was leaving so soon and if I would come join him and his friends now. I said I had a presentation to work on, and I went home, wondering if he had been keeping an eye on the bakery long after I'd entered it. The thought was chilling. I decided to talk to our mutual friend about his behavior, and she said that his personality was just off-putting, but He was harmless, and she would tell him off if he made me uncomfortable again. This pacified me for a while. Sometime after this, at another party, I found out that another girl he had met through my friends had had a similar experience with him and had been creeped out. I can't remember exactly what happened between them, but she said that he'd kept his distance after she told him she didn't want to befriend him. I wasn't a confrontational person, and furthermore, I was afraid of confronting men, so I hoped that ignoring his messages would stop him from reaching out. The frequency decreased, but the messages did not stop. He also wished me on my birthday for 4 years straight, even when I didn't respond. During the pandemic, he was relatively quiet. When he ran into me at a bar 2 years into the pandemic, when they had lifted restrictions, I had my mask on and looked away when he made eye contact and mouthed something at me. I disappeared into the crowd and got a text soon after saying, "Hey, did I see you at the place?" Which I ignored. So far, he hasn't tried to reach out, but I worry that he might text me again on my next birthday. I still don't think he's dangerous, but I definitely do not want to meet him again. So that was today's Stalker and Creepy Encounter video collection video. I said that backwards. Okay. Hopefully you all enjoyed this collection. And again, stories 2 and 4 were narrated by Nightmare's Edge, good friend of mine. Please do show him some love if you enjoyed his narrations. Or constructive criticism, always welcomed. We're always trying to grow, right? That's kind of the whole thing about making creative content. Growing is important. But yeah. Anyways, I hope you all did enjoy, and if you did, please do hit that thumbs up button. And if you would like to leave me a comment down below, again, please do so. I would love to read your comment. And if you're new to the channel, consider hitting that subscribe button, the bell icon, things like that. Just things that will keep you informed on what I do, if you like my work. You can also join Patreon or memberships down below, where for $1 a month you get early access for content like this. If you so choose, never ever expected, always, always appreciated. I don't have much else to say. This is the first of 5. Next week we have PA Nightmares and 242 Reads, unless something changes. Don't think it will, but that's what it is set for right now, and that's going to be fun. That'll be a long video because it's got 2 people, so... But of course, my friends, until I see you again, sleep well.